The letter arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, changing everything. What it revealed would expose a lie buried under years of power and silence. Ethan Miller had lived on his land for over 15 years, long before the Homeowners Association even existed. His small wooden house sat peacefully near the trees, untouched by the noise of rules or fines. When the HOA formed, Ethan signed nothing, agreed to nothing, and stayed invisible. Or so he thought. One morning, heavy machines rolled onto his property without warning. By sunset, wooden stakes marked the ground beside his home. Confused and alarmed, Ethan approached the workers, only to be told the HOA had approved construction. He laughed at first, believing it was a mistake. But the following week, concrete was poured. Walls rose. A house was being built on his land, without permission. Ethan contacted the HOA board, but his calls went unanswered. Emails vanished into silence. When he finally attended a board meeting, he was escorted out for disruption. Neighbors avoided eye contact. The air around him felt hostile, controlled. Notices began appearing on his door accusing him of violations he never committed. Fines stacked up. Stress invaded his sleep. Still, the construction continued. Every hammer strike felt personal. Ethan hired a surveyor, and the results were undeniable. The new house stood fully on his legally owned land. Armed with proof, he sent certified letters demanding answers. Days passed. Then weeks. No response. Instead, the HOA sent him a cease and desist notice, accusing him of harassment. That was the moment Ethan realized this was no mistake. This was something darker. Someone believed they could take his land and erase him quietly. And the truth behind why they chose his property would soon shock everyone involved. Ethan refused to stay silent. The survey report burned in his hands like proof of betrayal. He visited the county office, pulling old records that showed his property lines clearly defined years before the HOA ever existed. Each document confirmed the same truth. The land was his. Still, the construction continued daily, louder and more aggressive, as if daring him to stop it. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors. Some warned him quietly to back off. Others claimed the HOA always won. Ethan felt alone, but anger gave him strength. He hired a lawyer, draining his savings, hoping the law would protect what silence would not. When the HOA received the legal notice, their response was swift and cold. They accused Ethan of forging documents and delaying community progress. A letter arrived threatening massive fines if he interfered again. The pressure was suffocating. His lawyer uncovered something troubling. The HOA president had approved the build without a proper vote. Worse, the house under construction was already promised to a board member's cousin. This was not an accident. It was a calculated theft. Ethan filed a lawsuit. The moment court papers were served, the HOA launched a campaign to discredit him. Online posts labeled him unstable. Complaints flooded the county. Yet the evidence remained solid. As the court date approached, Ethan realized the fight was no longer just about land. It was about exposing a system that believed ordinary people would surrender quietly. What the HOA did next, however, would push the conflict into a shocking new direction. Court proceedings began under a tense cloud of whispers and hidden motives. The HOA arrived confident, backed by expensive attorneys and polished statements. Ethan stood alone at the table, carrying nothing but truth and exhaustion. The judge listened carefully as surveys, deeds, and timelines were presented. Every document confirmed Ethan's claim. Still, the HOA argued technical loopholes, claiming community development authority. During a recess, Ethan overheard two board members discussing a rushed sale. A house on his land was already listed, despite the unresolved case. His lawyer filed an emergency motion to halt construction. The judge agreed. Work stopped instantly. For the first time, silence returned to Ethan's property. But the pause came with consequences. HOA members turned hostile. Anonymous letters appeared in Ethan's mailbox, warning him to drop the case. One night, someone reported his home for false violations. Inspectors arrived repeatedly. Stress weighed heavily, but Ethan refused to bend. Then the discovery phase revealed something explosive. Internal HOA emails showed they knew the land was not theirs before construction even began. They assumed Ethan lacked resources to fight back. The courtroom atmosphere shifted. Confidence drained from the HOA's faces. The judge demanded explanations. Their answers collapsed under scrutiny. As testimony continued, the truth unfolded piece by piece. This was never about housing needs. It was about power, greed, and control. When the final evidence was submitted, the judge scheduled a ruling date. Ethan walked out of the courthouse unsure of victory, but certain of one thing. The HOA's secret was now public, and the fallout was about to be massive. The waiting period before the ruling felt endless. News of the case spread beyond the neighborhood, drawing attention from local media. Cameras appeared outside the courthouse. The HOA attempted damage control, issuing statements filled with vague denials. Ethan stayed quiet, letting the facts speak. Behind closed doors, the HOA board panicked. Emails later revealed frantic attempts to shift blame onto contractors and junior members. One board member resigned abruptly. Another hired separate legal counsel. The unity they once flaunted was cracking. On the day of the ruling, the courtroom was packed. The judge entered calmly, holding a thick stack of papers. His words were precise and unforgiving. He stated clearly that the HOA had violated property law, ignored due process, and acted with intentional misconduct. The house built on Ethan's land was declared unlawful. Gasps echoed through the room. But the judge was not finished. He detailed how the HOA's actions caused emotional distress, financial loss, and reputational harm. He ordered the HOA to compensate Ethan fully. The amount stunned everyone. $1.2 million. The figure covered damages, legal fees, and punitive penalties. The HOA representatives sat frozen. Ethan felt numb. Years of stress released in a single breath. Outside, reporters surrounded him, asking how it felt to win against such power. Ethan simply said the truth mattered more than fear. Yet the story was not over. The ruling triggered audits, resignations, and investigations that would reshape the entire community. After the ruling, the HOA's world collapsed rapidly. Members demanded transparency. Meetings turned chaotic. The president resigned under pressure, followed by 2 board members linked to the illegal deal. Investigators reviewed years of HOA decisions, uncovering patterns of abuse hidden behind legal language. Ethan received the compensation, but money was never the victory he sought. He used part of it to restore his land, removing the unfinished structure that once symbolized theft. Neighbors slowly returned, offering quiet apologies. Some admitted they were afraid of retaliation. Others confessed they had faced similar threats but lacked proof. Ethan listened without anger. His case gave them courage. The county imposed oversight on the HOA, stripping it of unchecked authority. Rules were rewritten. Elections were monitored. For the first time, residents felt protected instead of controlled. Ethan rebuilt his home with care, planting trees where concrete once stood. The land felt peaceful again. Media outlets labeled the case a landmark decision. Legal experts referenced it as a warning to overreaching associations. Yet Ethan remained grounded. He knew how easily this could have ended differently. Had he stayed silent, his land would be gone forever. As months passed, the community healed slowly. Trust returned in fragments. But one truth remained clear. Power without accountability always leaves scars. Ethan's fight proved that even the strongest systems could fall when confronted with evidence and courage. Life gradually settled into a new rhythm. Ethan no longer felt watched when he stepped outside. The HOA, once feared, now operated cautiously under strict supervision. Residents spoke freely during meetings. Questions were answered instead of ignored. Ethan was invited to join the advisory committee, but he declined. His role was never to lead, only to stand his ground. A house that had been promised illegally was never rebuilt. Instead, the land was returned fully to Ethan, documented and protected. He donated a portion of his compensation to legal aid organizations helping homeowners fight unfair practices. Letters poured in from strangers thanking him for standing up. Some shared stories eerily similar to his own. The ripple effect was undeniable. Across the county, HOAs reviewed policies, fearing similar exposure. Ethan's case became a quiet symbol of resistance. One evening, he found the original HOA violation notices stored in a drawer. He read them calmly, no longer affected by their threats. What once caused fear now felt powerless. Standing on his porch, he realized the true victory was reclaiming his voice. The system had counted on his silence. Instead, it met resolve. As the sun set over his restored land, Ethan understood that justice rarely arrives quickly, but when it does, it changes more than one life. It reshapes the balance between authority and humanity. Years later, the neighborhood looked different, not just in appearance, but in spirit. The HOA existed, but its shadow no longer loomed. Rules served residents instead of punishing them. Ethan's story was occasionally retold to new homeowners as a reminder of boundaries that should never be crossed. He lived quietly, content with the peace he fought for. The land remained his sanctuary, marked by resilience rather than conflict. Looking back, Ethan knew the shocking twist was never the money or the courtroom drama. It was the realization that ordinary people hold power when they refuse to disappear. The HOA believed authority guaranteed obedience. The court proved otherwise. Ethan never sought attention. Yet his stand protected countless others from silent losses. His case reminded communities everywhere that ownership is not just legal, but emotional. It represents dignity, history, and security. When those are threatened, silence is the greatest danger. Ethan's journey ended not with revenge, but with restoration. And that quiet ending was more powerful than any punishment ever could be, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.